that we used that opportunity of having a private meeting in order to listen to further information and personal information that the objector was prepared to give us. And that is all we did. We made no decision making. We didn't refer to the application that we're looking for in any sort of detail. We didn't have any kind of debate other than to listen, understand and digest the information that the objector needed us to know. And so now what we're proposing to do is to continue the debate where we left off. We were on questions, and I intend to continue with questions and then move to comment in the usual way. Okay, folks, everybody happy with that? So questions. Councillor Lamb, were we on a question from you? I can't actually recall where we left the last. You're the next one that appears on my unticked list. Yeah.
Sorry, I think I'd just asked my question about car parking impacts and
that's right.
Those assessments. I think that had been answered.
Okay, yes, you were raising how. Was there anything else you wanted to say? Yeah,
sorry, Councillor, if there's anything else that you need clarity on in relation to parking, by all means, I'm happy to listen. Yeah.
So I know that Councillor Anderson was waiting to come back in as well.
I was wanting to bring the issue up that it was actually health we were talking about, not environmental health. I wanted to make that point. But anyway, in respect of highways, you are asking for some money to be set aside if thresholds are set. What are those thresholds? Because, you know, is it what, you know, is it one whistle after 7 o'clock suddenly gets enforcement notice, or is it 20, 30? Car parking, when it comes to car parking, is it if there are 3 cars parked where they shouldn't do, that will trigger something, or has it got to be a reasonable number over a reasonable period of time? We need clarity over that, and also clarity on what you're going to do about the changeover period, because I don't agree with your maths that you will have double the number of people at one point in time. At one point in time, there will be the number of people who are just playing, and there will be people who are just about to start playing. And you've then got spectators that may be there as well and affecting both sides. So we need to be sure of the maths that are involved in terms of what you explained to us. We need to be sure about that. And also what we're going to do, irrespective of what we've heard from the school, what's going to happen when people do decide to park in other side roads and just change, or their relatives come in from the side roads, because there's no need for them necessarily to go in to the standard changing room. As long as they get changed in the car and go straight onto the pitch and play the game, that's met the need of the game. The actual football match itself is satisfied if there are the correct people on the pitch playing to the correct set of rules. That's not up to the school can't do anything about that. So I am concerned at the traffic management that could happen. And the other question I've got is on the consultation. I am not satisfied that the correct level of consultation has been done, and I would ask if it is possible if officers could do something about the additional the lack of consultation by going back, speaking to the residents, finding out what would and wouldn't be acceptable, and so that some people can have it fully explained to them. Because if you look at the number of people who've objected, a lot of the people who've objected seem to be within a tight locus, and those that, not exclusively, but those that are supportive of it appear to be supportive of the school principle. You know, in other words, they are members of the school who are supportive of it, and you would expect people to be supportive of their school. But we need to get the consultation so that we can get everybody's views out, everybody's expressed. And I don't see any reason why that should restrict time-wise, because if you organise a public meeting or something in early September, there's no reason why we couldn't have something back at the next available time thereafter, reporting what the outcomes were. But the two questions, one on the highway side and one about the consultation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Anderson. I'll try and answer those in reverse order, if I may. In terms of the consultation exercise, clearly the applicant stated that they did do a letter drop at the time of the prior to the submission of the original application. The effectiveness of that or otherwise, I'm not at liberty to say. There is obviously, we welcome as an authority community engagement and we try and promote that, but it's not mandatory. But in terms of the legal requirement to advertise the application, and that's been done on 2 separate occasions, the second occasion being at the request of Councillor Thompson. So it's had extensive consultation in terms of site notices around the site, and indeed it's generated lots of comments, public comments, both for and against the scheme. So the consultation has been widespread.
Can I just come back on that? Fine.
You use your mic, please.
It did or did not send letters to the immediate households who were affected, or did you rely solely on lamppost notices to notify residents in the area?
Thank you. As a major development, we would advertise it solely by site notice and not by individual letters. And that's our agreed. And press notice as well. Sorry, I beg your pardon. That's our position. That's our policy, and not to send neighbour letters.
Sorry, just to assist you, the development management order requires it's in the fashion that you've said. It's not a policy, it's a requirement, legislative requirement.
Okay. One of those days. So otherwise, if you miss one property out, then obviously there is exposure to the council in terms of not consulting all of the affected neighbours. So that's the situation in regard to consultation. I think the other issue you raised was in relation to the use of whistles and how that would be managed and how we would deal with complaints. Well, the applicants indicated that they would adopt a management plan, and we would condition that as part of any planning approval to prohibit the use of whistles after 7 o'clock. And if that was breached, then clearly the council would be alerted through complaints to our enforcement team, and we would take appropriate action at that stage. And indeed, we would expect the school to proactively manage that and to take a leading role in ensuring that is not the case and it doesn't lead to that situation in the first place. And I'm sure, given the commitments that have been made, and certainly from the submissions that I've read, that there will obviously be a commitment to do exactly that. In relation to car parking, and I think you said how many cars would it take before TROs would be introduced? Again, we would have to deal with complaints, and the school would have to proactively manage that situation. They've agreed to monitor that to make sure that that is not the case. And anyone who flaunts that by parking on the street, as you suggested, and then running straight to the pitch as opposed to getting changed in the changing areas, then they would be in breach of the booking arrangement. And obviously there would be consequences to that if that situation arose. So there are a range of measures and controls which we can reasonably impose, and then take action against if necessary.
What I'd make to that is most of us, if not all of us, have got experience of enforcement getting involved or not getting involved is probably more the point, and then turning around to us and saying it's not in the public interest to take this any further. At what point is the public interest that you would take it forward? Because I can tell you now that enforcement will come back and say in a number of the first few occasions, it's not in the public interest to take this any further. We've spoken to the school, and the school have undertaken to take the action that you've just outlined just now. So in the meantime, nothing will happen, because it will, and then it will start again, because there might be a period when the behaviours change. It will then start again, and enforcement will come back and say, we've spoken to the school, and before you know where you are, you're a year, 18 months down, nothing's happened, and everybody's on their best behaviour all the time. It's what my concern is. The bottom line is that if this has not been adhered to, we need to take action immediately to get something done about it. And the threat of enforcement action needs to be there so that the school are aware that we're not just going to give nice little pats in the back and a nice soft talks. We are genuinely going to take action, and we're going to condition it such that the strict action will be taken as early as possible.
I understand the point, Councillor Anderson, and initially the onus will be on the school to manage and comply with all of the relevant planning conditions. And if there is a breach and it's expedient to take action, the council will take appropriate action.
Yeah. Okay. Any further questions? Alan, you've got another one.
But it's very quick, and Councillor Anderson stole my thunder because it was on the very same point. I've had 3 instances this week where that exact circumstance has happened, where say here's the condition that was here's the evidence that it was breached. It's not in the public interest to do it. And my concern with this is it's dependent on a whole range of conditions. I'm not clear what the thresholds are, and I'm not clear what the consequence of breaching them are. And it seems to be it's going to be self-policing is what we're hearing. And it is the same thing. How many whistles, how many cars, how much impact does there have to be before action will be taken? It's understandable that residents are concerned, because I don't think these points have been addressed in what's before us.
I think it might be worth looking at how other pitches of this kind operate, because we do have successful pitches of this kind in schools operating satisfactorily. So it might be worth learning from those lessons, really, and looking at any parallels that are there. But I take your point, Councillor Lamb, and I'm sure that such information can be sought. I have to say, on the site visit, I wasn't uncomfortable about the parking arrangements. It was the easiest thing to do, to go into the car park and go past the office area, which was transparent and could be easily seen. I wasn't that concerned, really.
I'm sorry, you reminded me, I had one more question. The assessment that you referred to with traffic earlier, did that take account of other lettings that will happen at the same time that we heard about earlier? Because you've just given us the figures for, as if the football pitch is the only thing happening. It's also being a school. It's also being let out for various other things. Has that impact been taken into account?
Yeah, so the community, so we've assessed the worst case scenario, which is the community use of operating 5-a-side football pitches, all 4 of them at the same time, and that impact wouldn't cause a severe highway safety issue.
My question is, if at the same time it was open evening at the school.
No,
We reached a conclusion on that on the site visit. On whenever the school is in operation as a school, for example, parents' evening or a school production, the pitch would not be let out in the policy. Any further questions, please? Councillor Ray.
Just to clarify that point, is that going to be a condition, or is that something they're saying they're just going to do? Because that's the difference. There's a difference between intending to do it and it being conditionality.
It is conditioned in number 20.
Yeah.
Comments then, please. Anyone, any comments on this application? Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I'll go first. I mean, I think we probably all know where we're heading in terms of what we're going to suggest. But I think the first comment is I don't think this was ready to come to panel when you've got this much information to be asking about and this many questions and this many issues. I would question why it's been brought to panel at this point. And I think there are questions for the more senior officers to answer about why that's the case. But I think for me, I think there are four issues that need looking at. One is clearly around the health impacts. Without straying into anything that we've just heard, we clearly need much more information about that. I think we've heard the conflict about the conflicts with other lettings. That was one of my concerns. I'd just like some clarity. That's an absolute condition. The consultation hasn't been adequate. I think we're probably going to recommend that this is deferred when there's this level of concern. And I appreciate it's not a requirement of the applicant, but I would hope officers are giving the message loud and clear to applicants. Members expect that you will go the extra mile and go out of your way to speak to people when they've got this level of concern and try to address them so that we don't have to try and address them for you in these sessions. That shouldn't be. It should be about doing things with people, not to them. And then the final point is really being clear about making sure these conditions are binding, and we know what the thresholds are, and everybody knows and is clear that it is. If it says no whistles after 7 o'clock, it means none. Not well. There's a tolerable level, or there's and it's the same for all of the conditions. Let's be really clear and be clear what happens if those conditions are not adhered to. And I get the proposal is going to come from somebody to defer the application to deal with those issues, and I'd be happy to make that proposal.
Well, that's a helpful list of things for officers to go away and look at. Councillor Ray.
I think just to be clear, when we're referring to that, I think we're talking about obviously information which was disclosed to us and how that would be dealt with in the private conversation, because I think we've established on the other health issue, actually that's about the responsible borrowers authorities, which this planning authority is not meant to duplicate. So I think we just need to be clear, it's not about the rubber crumb, it's about the information we've heard in private session and how that is dealt with.
Can I just clarify, Councillor Wright, that is the impact of evidence that's presented within the report on a protected characteristic. That's the key area on which.
Thank you for the clarification. Yeah, I was just trying to clarify that we're not talking about the rubber crumb stuff. I'm satisfied with the parking conversation. I appreciate this is always a contentious thing with councillors and parking, because we always think there's going to be more cars, but it's about what can and cannot be insisted upon. I do agree it would be nice that the applicant does go away and do some more consultation, but I also appreciate we don't necessarily have a stick to do that with, because they have to follow certain rules, but a strong word. But on I think the basis for deferral there and is around obviously mainly the things that we heard around the impact of a protected characteristic on the planning decision in the private conversation.
Again, I think it might be worth checking whether ward members have done any consultation, because they often do on developments in their area. So that might be something to add into the mix. So just to be clear then, the information that we heard in the private session has led to a situation where we may need to seek further information. So that is another reason for deferral. And thank you, you've proposed deferral on the basis of seeking further information on the issues that you've listed, Councillor Ray and Councillor Lamb, and also on seeking further information and clarification around the information that we heard in private session and returning.
And that's so just so that members of the public are aware, the information that was provided in closed session was confidential in nature, but it related to a protected characteristic and the impact that the development would have on that. That links into the council's duty under public sector equality to be considered, and further information is going to be sought on that and presented, subject to obviously the deferral being voted upon in a further report.
So I've got a proposal for deferral, and that's a second. So can I everyone in favour show, please? And that is unanimous. So thank you very much for your patience and your persistence and your professionalism.
The other issues we were going to discuss,
Housekeeping.
for example, me and Councillor Lamb.
Yes.
How are we going to deal with that?
Yes. Yeah. Nikki, could you either offer a view now or say that you'll get some information out to us quite quickly about whether we need to stick to the same panel members? Yeah, that is a problem actually for me as well.
Yeah, generally speaking, given the information that's been provided and further reports are going to happen, it's considered good practice for those members for consistency in decision making. But equally, if you're able to appraise yourself of the facts fully, you may be able to have other members, usual members that normally sit on here. But I'll provide some advice to members outside of this, just in relation to what the planning protocol states, for some guidance.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we can close that item. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Right, folks, we'll start now with agenda item 7. And I think Councillor Anderson is remaining with us but not participating. Is that correct? He's left. Okay. Right, so it's over to Steve. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. So the proposal relates to demolition of existing buildings and the construction of a new building for residential use within U Class C3, which is residential, the provision of internal roads for vehicle and pedestrian access and servicing, car parking, landscaping, the substation, pedestrian infrastructure and modifications to the existing vehicle and pedestrian accesses. And the site is the former Wheatwood Police Station on Otley Road. This turned off. So this is the site. Sorry, but before I start, I just wanted to remind members that this application is not for determination today. It's come as a position statement. So the key purpose of a position statement is to seek members' initial comments and suggestions on the key planning issues to aid its future progress. And just in terms of a couple of updates, in terms of the reports, I've covered the climate change issues at paragraphs 117 to 122, and I've been a little bit hasty in concluding that the development complies with policies EN1 and EN2 at this point. And what I should have said is that the developers have shown admirable intent to exceed the policy requirements. However, we still need to do some further technical work to check that those targets above policy requirements are actually achievable. So we'll complete this additional work before the application comes back for determination and give you some clear comments on that. And then since the publication of the report, I've also received some comments from councillors Barry and Caroline Anderson, who are the ward members. It falls within Adel ward here. And I'll just summarise what they've said. So they've said, in summary, we compliment the developer and their agents for the level of consultation that they've had with us as local ward members, the local Adel Neighbourhood Forum, and the public consultation that took place at a nearby hotel. We have seen a reduction in the number of units and a reduction in height, so they have listened. Yes, there's always room for improvement, but on balance, subject to the issues raised, we are content with the proposal. And some of the issues that they've raised in there, they've raised viability. So they'd prefer that 30% affordable rented properties were provided on sites or a sum equal to the 35% requirements. And then in terms of highways, they've questioned whether there's enough car parking spaces for the 127 flats and visitors. Not everyone wants to cycle or use public transport all the time. If we truly believe that people should use public transport for their day-to-day activities, they need somewhere to park their car next to the house, which is safe and secure. The other problem the development faces in terms of public transport is that buses provided on a hub and spoke basis, i.e. they're talking about the impacts of east to west connectivity on public transport, because most of the routes go into the city centre. And essentially it goes on to say that 2-bed flats may have 2 cars attached to them. Similarly, 3 beds will most likely have 2-bed cars. So it'd be disappointing if cars were strewn around the internal road network. So moving back to the development. So this is the site here. So I've put a red dot on it there. So it's a former police station. Just to orientate yourself, that's Lawnswood roundabout to the southeast. Otley Road lies to the west of the site, and the Ring Road to the south. The site's just over a hectare in size. The police station closed in 2020. The building just to the south there's an electric substation which lies outside the red line boundary. As you can see, the site's well bounded by trees, and then you have existing accesses off Otley Road, so the most northerly ones are in only, and then as you get closer towards London roundabout, that's an out only, and then the access on Otley Road, which we use today, is in and out. And obviously in terms of the level of activity, it was a former police station which had quite a significant level of car movement associated with it. It had a lot of 9 to 5 staff in there, office-based staff as well. So in terms of actual the level of trips associated with this development, it's actually going to come out as a reduction in trips. This is just a wider context to help you orientate yourselves, but that's an urban area housing development to the western side. It's mainly 2-storey. There is some 3-storey development in there. There's the Boddington sports pitches to the north. They look as though they're under construction now, but they're finished. They relate to the University of Leeds. And then just to the south of the ring road, there's Wheatwood Hall and the Stables pub. And then Lawnswood High School is to the southwest across the other side of Lawnswood School. So this is the existing main police building. It's 2-storey brick with a pitched roof. And as you can see there's quite a lot of overground parking around the site. And you can just see to the left, that's where the tree buffer starts. And then this picture just shows that there's a secondary single-storey building which has got a bit of a light well at the top. That's in use at the moment. There's the calf shed, which is providing like children's services such as soft play and nursery aspects. This shows you a relationship between the site and the trees that bound Otley Road. So that tree buffer lies to the western side. And then this is the existing pedestrian access to the site from Otley Road. So you can see challenges there in terms of gradient and accessibility, because I think there's 10 steps there. This is looking back the other way again, just so you can appreciate the relationship between the tree buffer and the existing building. And then this is at the top of the ramp. So this is one of the in accesses looking down towards the site. And then this is an existing picture of the rear of the site, which is, the mainly being a service entrance. This is a picture from Otley Road, looking towards the site. So you can see in summer there's extensive tree cover, which blocks the majority of views into the site. You can see from this picture, you get some limited views through the site. You can see the brick just to the bottom right hand corner, and a bit of a roof in between some of the tree canopies. And I'm stood on the other side of Otley Road at this moment in time, so that's got 2 carriageways to both sides, plus that central grass reservation as well. And then this is a further picture from a bit further back. And then just to contrast, this is the scenario in winter when the trees have shred the leaves, so it becomes a much more prominent site. But obviously from there you can appreciate the level differences. So to the left-hand side of the building, you're just seeing the roof of that 2-storey building. As you get further down, you're seeing the first floor. And this is the opposite side. So this is the adjacent residential development, which is well screened at the moment. When you get close up to it, this is some of the 3-storey development at, I think it's Grangewood Court. Yeah. And then this is the eastern side elevation. So this bounds the sports pitches. So that's the University of Leeds rugby pitch. And you've got that tree belt to the boundary of the site. And that's a bit closer up. So it's quite a substantial tree belt, which is still maturing. This is the existing and proposed in access from Otley Road. And then this is the out only. So this one's a bit closer to the actual Lawnswood roundabout. And then this is the access that we use today off a ring road. So this is an in and out, but obviously as you're coming out, you can only turn left on this part of the ring road. And this is internally. This is the view you get as you're going out. So in terms of the scheme, this is the proposed layout. So it's for 127 residential units, and they're built to rent. And the development extends across 4 to 6 stories in their L-shaped design. It's a mixture of 1 to 3 beds and it includes new green space provision. So that area in the middle between the buildings, a landscape platform. So that's coming straight off the land levels from the adjacent Otley Road via a new bridge. It includes undercroft and overground car parking. So there's going to be 140 spaces and 139 cycle spaces. It's also going to be a car club space. And then you can see there on the roof, you've got your solar PVs, you've got some roof terraces and some green roofs as well. And then there's going to be the existing mature landscaping around the sites preserved and enhanced where required. So there's going to be some enhancement works to the eastern elevation. This is an example of one of the floor plans. I think this is just the fourth floor. Essentially, the building split into 3 cores, so they've got their own individual lifts and staircases, and the different colours there denote the different apartment sizes. So the rooms are accessed off a single corridor with a single aspect. And then this is a bit more of a zoomed in version of that floor plan. So again, this is the 4th floor. You can see there that the green one is a 3-bed unit. So that's got 2 double bedrooms and a single unit, and a kitchen stroke dining room. And then the yellow ones are the 1-bed units. This is the ground floor plan. So there are some apartments proposed at ground floor level. These can create a challenge because of the relationship with the neighbouring land uses. So that's going to be a parking area to the north and east there, and landscaping to the west. And it includes three of the units include like a sunken terrace, which is below the landscape platform. I don't know if I can point with this. Yeah. Oh yeah. There we go. So there's that one, and that one, and I'll show you the relationship in terms of a cross section when we get a bit further on. And this is those units in a bit more detail. So you can see there's 2 here with a sunken terrace, and then there's the 3rd one. But that's got a separate aspect to the west. And then these are the other ground floor units towards the south of the development. So just note that the ones on the eastern side, which are here, have got a close relationship with the parking areas. To the west, you've got the terraces and then a landscape buffer before you meet that path. And then this is just a cross section showing the relationship of some of these ground floor units to the adjacent parking area. So you can see on the right there, it shows the extent of the terraces quite close up to those parking areas. And this is just a map of the roof, which shows the extent of the roof terraces. So the roof terraces are split up. I think there's 5 separate roof terraces there, and each apartment will have access to a roof terrace as well as their own balcony and the on-site green space. So in terms of the design, the top image there is the eastern elevation. So that's what will overlook the playing fields. So it's 4 to 6 stories, contemporary design with large window openings with bronze frames and metal shade panels, and the elevations are quite structured and ordered with deep recessed windows. I'll just move on to this one. So the top image there is from Otley Road. So you can see the kind of black wavy line, which is indicative of the tree heights and the canopies. And this is essentially an elevation looking behind those trees. So you can see, because of that landscape platform, the development has the impact of a 5-story development really to this elevation. The bottom image there is is the southern view. So it's what you'd get if you stood at the bottom end of a development, where we stood today, really, at the start of the site visit. And that bottom image there is the other elevation, so the remaining north elevation. Let me just check. Right, so this image here shows the relative land levels between Otley Road on the left and the development. So that you can see they've drawn that red line across, which is from the apex of the neighbouring roof across the site. And this site's kind of sunken down behind Otley Road with quite a big setback from the road as well. So that reduces the visual impact of the development, and obviously it's behind the mature tree canopies as well. In terms of materials, it's going to be formed by two kinds of brick. Brick's the predominant material within the surrounding areas, and then you've got the bronze metal elements which are adding some articulation to the elevations. This is in a bit more detail. So these are of similar developments, just showing the metal detail in the type of balconies that are proposed, and the deep recess windows as well. And this is a proposed landscape plan. So you can see in the middle, this is the landscape platform, that square there. And then you've got two other key areas of green space here and here. And then you've got the tree buffer going down the western side. And this is the proposed pedestrian bridge. So this would take you from Otley Road through the trees onto the landscape platform. So it's an attractive design feature in its own right, and it's also got the functional use of providing level access from the adjacent road. And this is an early artist impression from above. So there's been some design refinements, but essentially it's showing you it within its setting there. And then this is an indicative image. This often helps instead of the flat elevation drawings, just showing you what's proposed if you stood on the landscape platform. So at the front there, you've got like a sculpture element, which is also provides some informal child's play. And there's a mixture of hard and soft landscaping, as well as buffers adjacent to the building to try and manage that relationship between the adjacent flats and the use of this green space. This is a drawing which shows the indicative scale if you were driving up Otley Road from Headingley coming up to Lawnswood roundabout. So it'd be hidden quite far back behind the substation building into the site underneath the tree canopies. And this is taken at winter, so it's a worst case scenario. This is going down Otley Old Road from Holt Park looking towards the site. And the building is just here. You can just see the grey scale of it really, but it's not unduly prominent. And again, from the Boddington pictures, which are private in nature, you get a limited appreciation of the building from long range views. From the ring road, we've acknowledged in the report that one of the key areas is its relationship with the open land to the east. And they've produced these sequential views from the ring road. So I'll take you through those one by one, starting east to west. And obviously east is a long way from the site, travelling up the ring road. So round here, because of it's turning the corner and the land levels, the site wouldn't be appreciable. And as you move further up again, you're going up a significant land level here, and the site's up here behind these trees. It's a long way away. And again, at 3, the land levels help to hide the development behind this land up here. And it's when you get to 4, which is about, I think I've put 180 metres from Lawnswood roundabout, that you'd start to appreciate the development. So this is, as I've said, a worst case scenario at winter when the trees don't have any leaves on. And you can see that building, which is I think it's set over 100 metres from the ring road at that point. And then this is just a bit closer up at towards Longwood roundabout. And essentially traffic might be queuing at this time, but at most points it'll be fleeting views you'll get as people are travelling in the cars. There's no footpath at that point. And then this is just a comparative image. So we pulled into the sports centre car park today and had a look, and we struggled to see views across the site because of that planting on the northern side of the ring road, and essentially that's what this image is showing. So you'll only really get those longer range views across the sports fields in winter when the trees aren't in leaf. So just going on to the key issues that are outlined in the report. In terms of viability, I've outlined in paragraph 79 onwards that the scheme has viability issues, and in particular it can't meet the affordable housing contributions which we'd usually expect through policy H5. Essentially the submitted viability information shows the development making a loss, but notwithstanding this, the applicants are offering a £700,000 contribution towards affordable housing as a commuted sum. This viability information is still under consideration by the district valuer, so we'd seek their specialist comments before we come to any conclusions on this, and any departure from the policies will need to be robustly justified. In terms of the design and scale, you'll note in the report I've said that the development's pushing the boundaries in terms of its height and scale in this location, especially its interface with the open fields. Having said that, it's 4 to 6 stories, which is mid-rise, and this is not uncommon in the suburban setting, and it's helped by the mature tree cover set back from the boundaries, including from the ring road there, where you've got the sports pitch in between, the land levels, and also the standalone nature of the site, which can take a higher density than what you might typically apply in a suburban area. And whilst we note it is one big building, there's been a lot of effort put into the design. It's using muted colour tones, fluctuating heights, and it's got various planes and setbacks that you'll have seen from the floor plans, which create interesting movement in the facades and ensure that a bulky flat elevation isn't created. And in particular, we're looking for members' views on density and height at this stage, because they're inherently linked to the viability arguments, which we'll come on to. And in terms of green space, it's providing some good quality public green spaces. We're still in discussions in terms of the final design of that green space. I think what we'd be expecting is a greater quantum of soft landscaping compared to, it's quite hard dominated at the moment. We also want more seating and some improvements in the child play. But the headline is that the overall quantum of green space is slightly deficient. And usually in these scenarios for a high density scheme, what we'd ask for is the majority of that to be on site, which they've done, and then the rest to be topped up by a commuted sum. So that commuted sum's around £69,000. The developer doesn't particularly want to pay this at this moment in time, and what they're looking at is whether they can utilise that area of woodland to the western side and put a path through there, and then for that to be considered as formal green space, making up the deficit. Now, as officers, I think we've got some concerns in principle. We'd need to see the detailed elements, but it'd be quite a short path. It's quite a short area of woodland, and then we'd be concerned about the possible knock-on impacts for biodiversity. So that would need to be factored into the biodiversity calculations. And then in terms of residential amenities, I obviously highlighted some of the ground floor units which don't have the best relationship with the adjacent uses. However, having said that, in general, the development, they've all got terraces, they've all got balconies, access to the on-site green space, and the roof terraces as well. So overall, there's good levels of amenity across the site, and we'd have to weigh up the potentially slightly substandard amenity of some of those ground floor units in the planning balance when we came to that. So I've highlighted there some of the key concerns that I've gone through in the report. We also need to note the key planning benefits. So it's the development of a vacant brownfield site, the provision of 127 homes, new green spaces which will be publicly accessible, new planting and biodiversity net gain, and then you'll have read in the climate change aspects of the report that they're seeking to provide low carbon technologies above our policy requirement. There's also going to be a car club space as well. So in terms of this position statement, members are requested to provide comments to aid the progression of the application, in particular in response to the questions that I've asked in the report. And it's also your opportunity to ask the developer any questions when they speak as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve, for that report. Before we have any questions at all, I invite Tim Waring to come forward, who I think is with us. Yes. Good afternoon, Tim, or is it good evening? Sorry to keep you waiting so long. Okay, so you technically you've got 4 minutes, please, and in your own time. You've done this before, so I don't need to explain about mics.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you. Yes, we have been rather patient, and I don't really want to go into a great amount of detail because I think Steve's report's been very, very thorough, deals with the matters both in a robust and a balanced manner. There are a couple of areas there I wanted just to respond on to help you with some context. I mean, firstly, we've worked with your officers over the past 2 years in developing a scheme, and Steve's report does outline the work that we've done and how we've pushed and pulled the scheme, reduced it in scale, and created, I think, a scheme that is that responds very well to its context, both visual, tree cover, built form, scale, heritage issues that surround the site. And such that I think design and conservation officers have raised no concerns with the design of the scheme. What I'd describe this as probably a gentle densification of the site, and clearly in light of government policy and your own policy, where we're seeking to optimize the use of brownfield sites and sustainable locations, and therefore reducing the need to call upon greenfield sites in the future. I think this is a site that has a great amount of merit, and a scheme that has a great amount of merit, especially notably in the North Leeds area, where I know there's a lot of pressure for housing, there's a lot of need for housing, and there's a lot of green belt, and those create clear tension. So where we can develop on urban brownfield sites such as this, then I think there is a great amount of merit. It's mentioned in the report that the scheme will deliver a range of units in size and mix, 1 to 3. It is a build to rent product. Build to rent is, I was going to say, it's a relatively new phenomena in the city. I mean, we're talking kind of in the last 7 or 8 years, it started to develop, especially in the city centre. It's in its infancy in the outer suburbs of Leeds, but nevertheless, it's starting to come, and it'll add to the further or meeting the needs rental product across a range of unit sizes, and especially on the smaller size in the North Leeds suburbs, where there aren't many smaller scale units. We've, and Steve's mentioned the affordable housing issue. We presented some viability evidence that's now with your, with the district valuer. The evidence that we've shown is that the commuted sum is equivalent to around about 15% discount market rent product. We are in an area that is a housing market area that's got a 35% requirement. Although it is worth noting that if we were 19 metres south of this site, i.e. on the ring, on the other side of the ring road, we'd only be 15%. So there is the kind of an issue in terms of that ring road and the market area. And I don't think it's a very clear definition as to what can accommodate 35%, what can accommodate 15%. But I think we have to just wait for the district valuer to come back and comment on that issue of viability. I think, turning to a couple of other matters that has been raised by Steve in the report, we've created here a scheme we believe that is sustainable in both its construction and its operation. The report talks about the level of sustainability and the carbon reduction and the energy consumption and how that is reduced to a level that is well beyond your policy. Steve mentioned the green space discussion that we've got ongoing. It's the applicant's preference to provide on-site green space where possible. If we can't achieve that on site, then we're happy to take the commuted some requirement, but we're working hard to try and keep it on site. We think there's benefit to it being on site. We're looking at potential trim trails through the trees, the treed area.
So Tim, you heard the pips. That marks the end of your 4 minutes. I think I can use a bit of discretion. Just finish your sentence. And,
Okay.
Anything absolutely major you want to get across?
Well, I think just to conclude, Steve has mentioned in his report and in his summary of the benefits. I mean, we think this is a very commendable scheme in terms of the ability to deliver a sustainable form of development, meeting housing needs and the particular needs of this part of the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And that was very clear. So this is a position statement. So I'm not going to stick strictly to questions first and then comments, but, a debate, probably starting off with picking up questions if there's anything anybody particularly wants to ask of officers or the speaker. No. Okay. Any comments? Councillor Lamb, Councillor Ray.
Yeah, they're probably a hybrid of question and comment. So the first bit, I mean, the first question you're asking is, do members support the principle of residential on the site? So I think absolutely yes. I think there's any issue at all about that. So the issues I have, and as a point of the affordables, the policy is clear. That there's no ambiguity about it, that the fact it's 19 yards over a line or 1 yard is irrelevant. The line is the line. It's 35%. That's what you should deliver. And I'd have my preference would be it's on site, because I hate it when you're delivering a new scheme and we're effectively saying it's exclusive and old people couldn't live there if they wanted to. So I'd like to see a bit more about that. I do have some concerns about the car parking provision on the site, particularly given how close it is to the main road. If there's not enough provided on site, where else are they going to go? Because I wouldn't like to think that Otley Road is suddenly getting cluttered with parked cars. So I think you need to look again at the parking provision. I'd be great for some clarity about energy and what the heating sources are going to be. I'd hope in a scheme like this, an opportunity to not have any gas boilers and things like that. Yeah, good. Okay. And then just on design features, I'm trying to think of a constructive way to put it, but it just looks a bit dull in terms of design. It's very boxy and it's very subjective view. So some others might have a different view, but I just think there's an opportunity to be a bit more imaginative and creative in the design. I just wonder if you considered, for example, living walls on parts of it, just to go even further on the carbon reduction and so on. So I think that's all my comments / questions.
Thank you. Would you like to address those areas where you can, please, Tim?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, taking each point in turn, the affordable housing, your policy is clear. I don't disagree. 35% is the requirement. Build to rent is the product we're providing here. There is a very specific build to rent policy that is permissive of off-site commuters. So I appreciate the preference from certain parties maybe to have that on site. Build to rent, just very quickly, viability issues. When the council produced the policy on build to rent, which was back in 2017, 2018, and the evidence base that was presented to support that. The anticipation was a build to rent would be in the city centre, and it wasn't a land use and a sector that was being considered out of centre or outside the city centre. The evidence base itself was very much based on city centre development and not suburban development. Suburban development has a lesser value in rental terms than city centre. What it also didn't allow for and recognise at that time was the inflation rate that build costs have gone through in the last 2-3 years. And that's why the policy is written in such a way that there is a viability test and a recognition that that's a genuine planning consideration. But I fully appreciate, and I think it's a matter really that we leave with the district valuer to see what the district valuer has to say, and then we'll have a further discussion with your officers if the district valuer disagrees with the position we've presented. In terms of car parking, we've presented evidence. We're consistent with your policy on car parking. We've given your officers and your transport officers, is a transport officer here today? Hi. Which we presented evidence that demonstrates the sufficiency of car parking. I think we're accepting of that position between the two parties. But again, I do appreciate it's a sensitive issue. We are in a very sustainable location here. It is a rental product. We are hopeful that some people will actually not use their car. This is it's on a major public transport route into the city. I actually know the area very well because I actually used to live here. So I did used to cycle in and I used to catch a bus. So in fact, went down to one car. So I do know that the area, and I think it's an issue that we've agreed with the officers in terms of car parking. Clarification on energy. There is some information in the officer's report. We can bring back further information to you on that. There won't be any gas boilers. I can assure you of that. We are using air source heat pumps and PV in order to address the energy consumption through on-site and a good level. Something in the order of about 90% on-site energy consumption can be provided through the technologies within the scheme. I've got the architect here who I want to have a word with you about the it looks dull, but we have worked hard again with your design officers, and I think we've got a scheme that we've satisfied you. Oh, he's come over. He's giving you 50 yards. We've worked very hard with your officers to get to a scheme that we think is well, and Mr. Varley will hopefully confirm, is one that is supported. But I hear what you say.
Thanks very much indeed. And just before you come in, Mr. Architect, I must say I welcome the contemporary design, just to give a contrasting view so that you've got a bit of scope for comment. I welcome the contemporary design, and I actually think the amount of detailing you've got, despite the fact that it is blocky, it actually answers the question. And I like the big windows, and I congratulate you on the balconies. I think the green space could be greener, personally. I'd like it to feel a bit greener. But I think balconies and roof terraces and green space is quite an achievement on that site. So in terms of the architecture, I actually quite welcome it. I don't know whether to bring Steve or do you want to come in first, Steve?
Can do. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. Just to save the architect the embarrassment of having to do a sales job. I think we have worked together. Words like dull are difficult. It's a calm, ordered, disciplined development, and it's not. We did discuss this some 2 years ago. We didn't support it at the start when it first came in, but I won't bore you with the details. We've now arrived at a scheme where, when you look at the blocks with the planes of the walls moving in and out and up and down, it's not an L-shaped blob. It's actually a series of interlinked tiny blocks, and they're changing the brickwork tones and everything else. And I think we've got to bear in mind it's Weetwood and Adel. It's a very calm, sensible, ordered, structured building that sits nicely behind the trees and is providing important housing. So we'd support it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, can I bring the architect in at this point?
There was just one small item I'd like to add, and thank you very much for those comments. We obviously have worked closely to get to where we are. The green walls issue, yeah, we would like more of that, and we actually have incorporated green walls in the scheme. They're actually where we can utilise those. Particularly around the Undercroft car parking, we have indicated a living moss wall to really sort of bring that down to that human scale, down to the ground. Unfortunately, you know, those aren't readily visible on too much of the elevations, mainly because much of the facade is obviously required for sort of the accommodation space and such, but we'd like to think that we've taken the opportunities where we can, because it is a lovely and delightful feature where appropriate.
Like to come back at all, Councillor Lamb?
Just to say, no offence was intended, and I'll accept my clumsy language, perhaps, but it did not convey my subjective view. So I'm suitably schooled.
Councillor Ray.
That's the politest scolding I think Councillor Lamb's ever had in the council in any way, shape or form over the years. Couple of points. You'll forgive me. You've chosen to buy the site and build on the site, and you've chosen the model of which you want to have the site as. You'll forgive us for having no sympathy in relation to your viability model or how many or the viability. If you didn't want, if you're saying that actually to make it more viable, you don't have build to rent, then you don't do build to rent. You've chosen that model, not the council. So you'll forgive if members probably don't have much sympathy or support for your argument. In terms of the green space, I think trying to use the wooded area that you're walking through as green space is not really a sellable argument either. It's not usable if it's a path. It's not something you're going to meander around for hours. It's something you walk through to get from the road to the building. And I don't think that's a good argument. And I take Councillor Gruin's point. You need to do much better on the green space and on the kind of community facilities that are on site in that regard. I like the design as well in general. So like I said, my key points around this is, it is where it is. You're choosing the building model. And so certainly for me, you know, when we come to the question on the affordables, and this is more of a comment in the question than anything, because I don't need the developer to come back, you're not going to get any sympathy or support on that particular question.
Oh, Steve wants to add in something here.
No, sorry, thank you, Councillor. I'd just like to apologise to Councillor Lamb if I've upset him. It's just that, as you rightly pointed out, dull is a sort of subjective word, and I think what was trying to say is I'd have gone for calm. It's a calm down, but I do apologise if I upset Councillor Lamb. Thank you.
Can I clarify, Chair? I was not upset in any way, shape or form. There's no need to apologise.
I would just like to clarify and ask the question. I think the CGIs probably aren't very good. I think probably it looks better than it looks on the CGI, or it will look better if it's ever built out than it looks on the CGI.
Thank you, Councillor, because I'm now going to raise an issue that every major office has read. That screen, it does not render the colours properly, and it's the major screen that we are using to present applicants' work. You look at some of the, and we've mentioned it time and time again, but nothing seems, well, officers have, you know, and in fairness, it's not presenting the applicant's work properly. So you're right. Thank you.
Are there any more questions or points? You put your hands up simultaneously. So I'm going to take Councillor Rowntree first, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Chair.
I line up with the people who quite like it. Actually, I'm generally quite. I would like to ask the architect what influenced the choice of materials. Was any consideration given to an alternative to brick? Would anything else have been sort of suitable or feasible? And a couple of quick ones. Could you say something about the depth of the balconies? I'm not sure if they're all identical in depth. I'm just wondering how far out they extend. And I have to say, I think this has already been mentioned. I'm not myself sold on the notion of a path in the sort of narrow band of green space alongside the road there. It's probably, to my mind, that sort of is a detriment to the green space rather than enhancing it. Anything it probably shouldn't be there. But if you get onto those points, I'd be really grateful. Thanks.
I'll just start with the materiality. Obviously, we are in a suburban context, and we're looking for materials that are contextual in the suburban area. Alternative materials tend to sort of strike at sort of like less domestic and sometimes overemphasize the contemporary nature. We also opted for the slightly different tonal options in terms of brick that offers, and I think there's a lovely texture that you can get from brick at this the scale of what we're talking about, and it is scale that should relate to the domestic, should relate to the person rather than the much wider sort of like city and city centre kind of palette of materials you usually find. In terms of the balconies are all the same depth there, but they vary in terms of their overall width. Sometimes they're shorter and sometimes they're much longer, and that is really a byproduct of the grid of the facades. In terms of the actual depth itself, I can't remember the exact dimensions now. It's been sort of probably 2 years since we've drawn it. But,
it's 1.4 meters. I got asked a question on site today, and I think it was Councillor Campbell, and I couldn't see him here, so I thought, and I would mention it, but yeah, it's the 1.4 meters when you scale.
Run and grab my scale ruler actually. But yes, I mean, it's from an ergonomic point of view, it's sufficient to have a bit of amenity space, a cafe table, a couple of chairs or something similar.
Councillor Manaka?
I was going to say, could I just come back on the final point, which was about the path through the trees? I hear what you say, and you know, we won't die in a ditch. Not that there's any ditches on this site, but we won't die in a ditch about this issue. I think, you know, we're happy to concede that if this is the position that you don't see that as appropriate, then off-site commuted some is the way forward. But we've presented a scheme which shows a trim trail. It's not just a path, but it's a trim trail that is slightly more informal than some of the formal green space we've got. We do think there is a merit in it. We are happy to work further with your officers on it. Perhaps we could even condition it, or we can give you an either or when it comes back to committee. But there's still some more detail. Biodiversity issues, we've dealt with those in the planning submission, and we've taken some recent views in light of some comments in the report from the officers whether there's an impact on biodiversity. It won't impact on biodiversity, the scheme. By putting a trim trail through there, we'll maintain the minimum of 10% biodiversity net gain. And then finally, just back to the point about the quality of the presentation on the screen, which Steve knows from previous discussions that we've had in relation to some of the city centre schemes I've represented. We're very happy to bring in some material for the meeting for decision. So you can see the quality of the material, and you can see the quality through some of the imagery in hard copy, old fashioned way.
Thanks for coming in on that. Councillor Malacca.
Thank you, Chair. I think from when we went for the site visit, I was more concerned about pedestrians, and I think I would like to raise that. If I'm looking on, on all sides of the road, we are planning for families, possibly because of the 3 bedrooms. I'm more concerned of, I didn't see any traffic lights, and I do appreciate there's a bridge teams that is on the report stating something about, they'll go with whatever the proposal is, but it would be nice to just understand in detail about pedestrian safety and all that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Would you like to respond to that one?
Yes. So we've paid a special regard within the site to pedestrian permeability, and within the site it's been purposefully designed to ensure that the pedestrian essentially has priority where it can, and then the cars and the car movements effectively are divorced from the pedestrian movements. Once you get outside the site, obviously we're onto the public highway. As you may be aware, the public highway is subject to some fairly grand plans, and there is the connecting Leeds piece on the Lawnswood roundabout. That will be delivered, I understand, and within that there will be all access movements. We are anticipating in terms of delivery of this that it'll probably be next year when we could start this. I mean, we've still got the planning process to conclude. We'll then have to go through the contracting, and we've also got existing short-term tenancies on the site from BBC, etc. So it won't be until next year that we'll be starting this, and probably middle at the earliest. So by which time it'll probably be an 18-month development program or construction program. I looked at the client about 18 months or so. So we'll be, by which time the Lawnswood roundabout works will have taken place, touch wood. There are obviously some crossing points at the moment. They are, I was going to say, I wouldn't say that they're the best, but they are there. And I do know, as I said, I do know this area very well. I walk it. So, but yes, I do understand what you're saying.
Would you like to come back, Councillor Malacca? No.
No, Chair, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Bromley next.
To be honest, my question has actually been answered, but I'm going to make up another one. So I was going over looking at you saying that you're looking to rent out at 15% discount for what the average is renting in the area. Is that correct?
No, what I was saying was the commuted sum is equivalent to 15% of the product of the units being rented out at 20% market rent. So the council's policy in relation to build to rent affordable housing is that there's essentially a menu of options that you have. The first one is to provide on-site at the 35%, or depending on which housing market area you are. The second option is to provide 20% of the units at 20% discount market rent, or the third is to provide a commuted sum equivalent to the first option. So what I was saying is that's the £700,000 commuted sum is equivalent to providing 15% of the units on site at a 20% discount market rent. So apologies if I was confusing matters.
And I can see that definitely like 2-bedroomed apartments, and there's not many 1-bedroom apartments around the area at all, is it? So I imagine that you see that in about 4 or 5 years' time, there definitely would be something that would be in demand. But I know definitely affordable housing is something that is crucially in demand. And so looking from a council point of view in 4 or 5 years time, long term, what would be a benefit to the area would also be real investment into that. So I'm really keen that it's something that is really discussed further and not negotiated too heavily on a boundary and here there. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gabani, please.
Thank you. Presumably the intention is that the 3-bedroom units, possibly even the 2-bedroom units, could have families in them with children, and you have one sculpture stroke informal play item shown on the plans. Is there any chance of any additional amenity for children on site?
Trim trail, sorry. The discussion we've been having with the officers is the nature of the green space offer on the site. And I hear what Councillor Gruen said is that perhaps perhaps the podium area needs to be greener. And one way that we can deal with these matters is to actually set some parameters within the planning consent and come back with a detailed design and landscape scheme that addresses play space, it addresses green space, it addresses both informal and formal green space. So that's a matter that can be controlled. The policy requires, and forgive me, but I'll use kind of high level judgments here, but your green space policy requires circa 4,000 square metres of green space on the site. The scheme at the moment has around about 3,000 square metres of green space on the site, usable, taking away the tree. I'm not incorporating the trees on my trim trail that I seem to be fixated on. So we're kind of 1,000 square metres down on what your policy requires. So we would make a commuted sum payment for that. And then that 3,000 square metres, we can design it to suit and listen to you. And I think I've taken away today more green space, more potential for children's play space. And those are matters that can be dealt with through a planning condition.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Lamb next.
Thank you, Chair. It's coming back to the viability issues, and I guess it's a question for both ends of the table. It follows on from what Councillor Ray said. From having sat through these applications before, what we know is the district valuer can only offer comment on the viability of this particular scheme. What I would like to be able to understand is what other schemes might be more viable and could deliver the affordable housing. And so it's interesting to know what work the applicant has done to come to this model as the one they've chosen, and is there the opportunity to ask the district valuer to comment on a high level on alternative models, so we're not just looking at this.
Yeah, I will bring you in, Councillor Ray, but it's perhaps an opportunity for me to ask a couple of my questions because they're almost identical. Why have you decided to pursue an unviable scheme? Why have you chosen built to rent in this area? That's a mystery to me. And I must say that I think we'd probably all be in agreement with the points that have already been made about the percentage of affordable housing. For me, those are very weighty issues. But Councillor Ray, please come in.
And I think just to add on to the point, at what point is that viability assessment done? Because it says in the papers obviously about the impacts on energy costs and supplier chains. We know energy costs are coming down. We know supplier costs are coming down. So at what point is that viability assessment done? Because if work doesn't start until a year's time, and the market's going in the way that it's going, that's a very different variability conversation to if you were to doing it only 3 months ago when energy prices were up to 30% higher and therefore commodities were up to 30% higher. So it's that trigger point of when the assessment is done as well.
So if you'd like to respond to us on those points.
You might not like the answer that I'm going to give you, Councillor Ray, but the work was undertaken a year ago. So as a consequence of that, we found increased inflation, and therefore as a consequence we're waiting for the district valuer, because we've been waiting for a while for the district valuer to come back and comment on this piece of work. And I think once we've got that response back, we can respond if we have to. I think the district valuer will be taking account of inflation, etc., and future market. We can look at dynamic ways of dealing with Section 106s, and we can have a test within the Section 106 if it's felt appropriate to test it at the time of the development. So I think, to reassure you, we're not seeking here to derogate from our duty of providing affordable housing. It's just what the scheme can afford, and so it sounds a bit blasé, but it'll be what it'll be. The question about why did we choose build to rent? Sorry, I'm only the planning consultant. So there's a number of issues that come into play in relation to why a scheme's developed in a particular way, but we know that there is a market for build to rent. We know that there is a need for build to rent, and we know that there's a need for house types of this nature, especially in North Leeds, small units that accommodate either small households or individuals who at the moment are having grave difficulty finding such accommodation. We've got Headingley, where there's a lot of smaller accommodation, but taken up primarily by students. And in the North Leeds area, there's a real paucity of small units, and there is a real need for rental properties. And I think I've seen Councillor Anderson's letter. Stephen Wilkins shared it with me today. I think he's on the ground. He knows the issues and the local market circumstances here. So hopefully that helps to answer some of the questions.
Yes, thanks very much. Have we got any more? Oh, Councillor Lamb.
I was looking for guidance from officers on that as well, about whether we can ask for viability on a higher level of other options, because otherwise you just have to. The district valuer is in an impossible position as well, because they can only assess what's in front of them.
Sorry, Chair, just to intervene. It's a bit of a yes and no, is this, Councillor Lamb, to be honest with you, because that would be a bit speculative, that level of information. But what we could do is bring the DV here, whatever response he comes back with, to explain it so members fully understand his methodology in terms of whatever decision he's come to, if that helps.
It doesn't really. So I think we understand the methodology. It's more an assessment of, right, well, this is one scheme and we're being told it's not viable. Your question is pertinent, Chair. Why are you putting forward an unviable scheme? I'm struggling to see that in this location, you couldn't deliver a viable scheme that could meet the affordable housing requirements. But we're not, without information provided, we're not able to make that judgment, and it becomes not a material planning consideration.
Yeah, I understand that point, but what I'm suggesting is that the DV, when they come to whatever conclusion they come to, will probably be able to answer those questions directly when he's here.
They haven't been able to, please.
Well, obviously we can invite him.
Look, Steve, go on.
Just in terms of a general question, so we'll obviously get the DV's comments, and as part of the discussions with the DV, they've said that they'll cost the same development as a market one. So if those 127 were to be sold as a market level, and see whether that came out as a viable scheme as a comparison. And also their comments, it's been mentioned that they'll be changed for inflation and the current rent values, given the lapse since when it was submitted. And I believe that the DV's comments are a fine for a 6-month period before they need to be reviewed. So essentially, once those comments come back, we'll look to bring it to panel as quickly as possible, whilst giving you the planning policy and legal background to help make your decision on these viability issues.
Alan, do you want to come back? You look very unhappy.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm not making my point well, or if if you've got a piece of land, you've got numerous options for how you could develop it. All the district valuer can do is assess the scheme that's put in front of him. We've had that before when it comes back to panel, and that will be what he says. If I ask him questions about, well, what if they'd done this? He will say, I can't answer that. I can only answer. And at this stage of a position statement, we're being asked to give a view on whether this scheme it's acceptable to move away from the affordable housing requirement. Well, without seeing what the alternatives are, how can we give the only view we can give is no, it's not acceptable. But without an assessment, you're just making it on instinct, not subjectivity.
Steve did actually say that he was going to bring back a comparator in terms of a full market for sale scheme as well. That's the question you're asking, I think, isn't it? Because that, you know, I'm assuming he will say that's viable. So isn't that answering the question if that's what he's going to bring back?
My question though is why would you pursue something that is non-viable? And would you be looking at different schemes to see if they compared more favourably on that site? I think that might be getting somewhere towards it.
I think the issue here is that the viability, there's a particular methodology for determining viability, which is set out in the PPG. And it all turns ultimately as viability on the holder of the investment at the end of the day. So Pickard Properties are a long-standing, long-term holder of investments, and take a different view, for example, to somebody like, I don't know, Legal and General. So they are happy here because they're going to sit on a longer-term product, whereas, you know, they don't rely upon shareholders or whatever, so they can take a view on viability on a longer term. So that's the difference, and I appreciate it's a difficult concept to get around. Why would you produce something that's not determined under planning as not being viable? I think the question about, well, what, you know, are there other schemes that are viable? I mean, you are faced, you know, I'm afraid to say, with this scheme, and it's for this scheme you have to determine. You're not determining another scheme, and if you find it is unacceptable, then you know that then you have the right, obviously, to refuse it on that basis. But I'm afraid I can't really answer much more, and I do think the district valuer is going to be key in terms of what he finds, and who knows, he might say actually Quad and the applicants have got it completely wrong, and that actually it can stomach 35% commuted sum. But
You've made your position quite clear on that, and I totally accept what is and what isn't within the panel's remit. So I think that's a fair enough response, although I'm not happy with the affordability aspect. Is something, as you know, that we're all very, very keen to pursue in Leeds. Are there any more comments from anybody? Any more guidance? We'll go through the questions then, if that's okay. Can find them. Here we are. No. So, do members support the principle of residential use on the site?
Yeah.
Yes, I think there's general agreement on that. Do members support the proposed height and scale of the development at 4 to 6 stories? That's a yes for me. Is there any dissent from that? So that's a yes. Do members support the design of the development, including the proposed palette of materials?
So take a majority vote on that one.
I think, in fairness, it's a yes, and can we have some better presentations and further opportunities to comment? Question 4: do members support the proposed housing mix in terms of number of bedrooms? Yes.
So that's excluding the affordable.
Yeah.
Yes, that's not an affordable question. It's do we agree with the mix of provision within that? Yeah, that's a yes as well.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
I think is there a more pertinent question of whether we're happy with the affordables being delivered off site? So there'll be no affordable housing on this site.
Yeah, that is number 5. Do members wish to provide any general comments in relation to affordable housing viability issues within the proposed development? Well, I think we've given you some thoughts on viability, and I think we've been fairly clear on affordability. We'd like a greater percentage, even though it doesn't technically have to be made, and we'd like it on site if we could. Am I representing people fairly in saying that? Yeah. What are members' opinions on the potential for the woodland area to be utilised as a green space in principle? I think that's not gone down too well, despite your further description of, what did you call it, a trim trail? Yeah, well, you might want to bring an illustration of that back, but we kind of don't think that's a goer.
Yeah.
Well, we invite you to bring back your interpretation of that. Do members have comments to make in respect of the general approach to green space? I think we've said that, haven't we? We'd like it to be greened up on the main platform. And we note the green wall comments that you've made, but we're always in favour of green walls. Although I do understand that green walls don't actually absorb that much carbon. Is that wrong? Is that wrong? Is it? I've got wrong information there then.
Just on that issue, Chair, that obviously it was not just the provision of more greenery, but also looking at the children's play.
Yeah, the enhancement of the children's play equipment, etc. on that platform. Do members have any comments to make in respect of the amenity of neighbours or future residents? We haven't touched on that one. Any views, Councillor Bromley? Can you pop your mic on for the recording?
Just highlighting what we discussed on site actually. So to discuss in terms of access to doctor and primary schools locally as well. From what I could work out, there was only one primary school and doctors as well close by, apart from 2 private primary schools.
I think we could include that on question 12 about infrastructure and availability of school places.
Sorry, the last question, any other points?
Oh, any other points?
Yeah, I've not labelled that question.
Okay. Yeah, okay, thanks for raising that.
Sorry, on question 8, I think really what we were asking about was the flats that have on the ground floor that don't have the same sort of amenities with the balconies that others do. I mean, we did discuss on site, I know all members weren't there, that where we can, with the applicant's agreement, sort of buffers have been provided, etc. And I suppose there is a bit of a principle of buyer beware using Councillor Anderson's response on his response that Steve had. So I think that's what that question was about. But I think taken in the generality, there are only a few of those that are slightly challenged in that respect. So I'm assuming that's probably generally an okay. And say Councillor Anderson was fairly comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll always bow to ward members' views on these things. Personally, I wouldn't want one of those ground floor flats with a sunken garden if there were others with balconies available. Do members have any concerns or comments relating to the ecology, nature and trees? When on site, we did touch on this. I'm sure it'll be a no, but there are trees planted on the verge outside the curtilage of the development, some of which you're going to have to remove for access. We wondered if you could plant more trees on the verge, actually, make it a bit more user-friendly to pedestrians.
Sorry, Chair, to interrupt. I tried to explain this to Councillor Campbell on site. It's more complicated than it appears, that, because apart from it being highway verge, there are obviously plans to alter some of that as a result of the alterations to the roundabout in the long term, but also you have a lot of statutory undertakers bits and pieces underneath the verges. That's what they often hide. So planting more trees on them, it could be very problematic. So it's a difficult one for Tim to answer, but I think
we'll bring our highways in.
Ahmad probably, I don't know.
Ahmed.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, not much to add. There are some very big utilities there, so I doubt any trees that we planted there would survive, actually. And there's obviously the wider issues of Lonswood roundabout proposal.
Fair enough.
I'm going to note that was an okay then.
Well, more as a neutral, I think. Do members have any concerns or comments relating to highway issues? Alan?
Yeah, I think I think it really needs an over provision of parking on this site. I appreciate it's policy compliant, but given where the alternative is, it needs to factor in visitors. It needs to factor in all of the Amazon deliveries and takeaway deliveries and things like that, and make sure there is sufficient room and space for overflow parking. Because there's no, where else would you go in that location if you pulled in and couldn't park?
Councillor Ray?
Yeah, sorry, this is probably going to the end of a bit, but actually it comes to the parking bit with deliveries actually. I'm assuming with this, obviously, where's the mail going to be? Because we have massive issues in apartment blocks now with mail theft. And actually, where's the secure mail storage going to be? Because I'm assuming, I don't know if there's going to be a concierge on this site or not, but actually what's going to be done around mail delivery of parcels and that, because in all of the modern contemporary blocks now across the city, we have significant issues of parcel theft.
Can we ask for a comment on that, Tim?
Yes, you can, and I'll pass over to the architect, but we have accommodated it. There is a, yeah.
Yeah, just to confirm, there for each of the cores of the buildings, there is located parcel lockers that are externally accessible and fully locked by sort of code provision and things like that. So it safeguards the security and access from a resident's point of view, whilst at the same time affording plenty of space for deliveries.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And we have discovered at this end of the table that we've got your firm's name, but not your name. And I'm sorry if we've appeared rude by not referring to you by name. Would you like to tell us?
My name is Richard Walsh. I'm a director at Halliday Clark
Richard.
Architects.
Okay. Thanks, Richard. So question 11, do members have any comments in relation to the environmental impact of the proposed development? I think that's a no. We don't really. No. Do members support the proposed provision of accessible housing and access for all adaptations? We have not discussed that, have we? Are there any issues that occur to anybody about adaptations? Yes, please, if you would, Steve.
Yeah. Just in terms of the headline points on this, it's covered at paragraph 1, 2, 3 of the report. Essentially, we've got a core strategy policy H10, which relates to a certain percentage of the units required to meet the accessible standard. So 30% would need to meet the M42 building regs requirements, which is accessible and adaptable, and 2% would be required to meet the wheelchair user dwellings. So this development meets those requirements, meets those headline provisions. So there'll be 38 at the M24 and 3 wheelchair accessible units, and also across the site permeability. So you've got the lifts within the buildings, and you've also got the lifts taking people up from the parking area to the raised platform if you want. And they're also improving the accessibility to the adjacent highway by putting that pedestrian bridge in at that correct level.
Alan.
Yeah, just wondered, from experience in other applications, have we asked the accessibility officer for comments?
Have we?
Yes, it should be detailed in the consultation section, but if not, essentially we're happy with the headline figures. That we just need clarification on the actual wheelchair units, which I still need to get from her in terms of the overall design of those. You know, whether they're large enough, have got the correct turning circles that they'd meet that standard. The developers have provided that. I just haven't got the formal comments yet.
So we're all right on that one. And then really just any other comments anyone would like to make for noting? No, I don't see any hands. So I can therefore say thank you both very much for coming along this afternoon and sharing all of that information. And I personally really like the development. I just wish there was more affordable housing. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much indeed. And that, I think, concludes. You want to sum up?
There are one or two other comments that I've got on my notebook that I was taking down when individual members were making them. So I won't go through them, but in terms of this, question 1, use on site was a yes, height and scale was a yes. Question 3, materials, yes, but better presentation material needs to be provided. I have to say, this screen, one of the problems with the overhead projectors is they're not quite as good in terms of the precision as the TV screens. We know about that. Today, though, for some reason, it was particularly poor at the beginning. But at the moment, we have requested this. I know Steve brought it up here, but maybe perhaps shouldn't have done, but we do keep making requests about this, but it's slightly outside our control. 4 was a yes in terms of the housing mix. The members 5. Well, more info is required for it yet to be proven about the affordable housing and viability issues, and a part of that's going to be subject to the DV's response as well as to where we go with that. 6 members' opinions, potential for woodland. Well, that was, apart from Tim's fixation with the trim trail, that was a no, wasn't it? To be fair. 7, do members have comments in respect to the general approach to green provision? We wanted less of the hard standing, which is really the footpaths on the platform area, a bit more thought given to any kids provision. I'd captured there. 8, comments in respect of neighbours or future residents. Generally, that was okay. 9, concerns relating to ecology and trees. That was an okay stroke neutral, I think, specifically. 10, we need more convincing relating to the car parking provision, particularly overflow and deliveries, to avoid any stacking or whatever onto the road or parking there. 11 was simply no. Do members have any comments in relation to environmental impact of the proposal, which is a positive, actually. I know it's a negative positive. And 12, the members support the proposed provision of accessible housing and access to all adaptations, subject to getting a positive response on the turning circles, etc., for the wheelchair adaptable ones. I think the answer to that was yes. And I will pick up the other individual comments, which will appear in the minutes that members made, so we can check it at the next panel when it comes back if there's anything that's been missed. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you very much. That has been a long session. I thank you very much for all your contributions and your patience and your good hard work. And I won't see you next time necessarily, but we will come to a view about whether we do need the same members around the table for the playing field item, and we'll let you know. Okay.